Hey guys, Rukshan here. Welcome to another episode of In Case You Missed It, an end of the week news roundup of some of the stories that I've been following and I haven't had a chance to make a video about. So, first up, I'm going to start with something totally different, which is a movie review of a film I haven't even watched. Now, you might be wondering, Rukshan, why are you doing a film review? Well, it's for this movie, A Sound of Freedom, which, as far as I know, is not available to watch in Australia yet in any kind of theatrical release or online. But I'm sure that will change at some point, and there might be some limited screenings in Australia, or of course online. We'll be able to watch that soon here. Now, this movie, obviously, I can only talk about the news aspects of it because I haven't seen the film. But it's very highly rated right now since its release. 8.6 on IMDb out of 10. Very highly rated on Rotten Tomatoes, I believe. And I'm just going to read the synopsis of this movie so you get a bit of a context of what I'm talking about to see what it's about. So, the storyline of The Sound of Freedom. Sound of Freedom, based on the incredible true story, shines a light on the event and light on even the darkest of places. After rescuing a young boy from ruthless child traffickers, a federal agent learns the boy's sister is still captive and decides to embark on a dangerous mission to save her. With time running out, he quits his job and journeys deep into the Colombian jungle, putting his life on the line to free her from a fate far worse than death. Now, this is released by Angel Studios. And the interesting thing about this movie was that I think originally Disney and Fox Studios had something to do with this movie a while ago, like a few years back, and it was never released. Now, this studio has bought the rights and released this movie, and it's doing really, really well in the box office in the USA. And I think if you've followed this story, you might notice that Mel Gibson has also some involvement with this movie in terms of supporting the movie, as well as the main actor starred in Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. So, what is the controversy around this movie? Well, starters, it's doing a lot better than any other kind of Hollywood usual blockbusters where they spend hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes. And this movie, which is I think cost about $15 million or so to make, US, is smashing some of these other movies. Of note, Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford's last Indiana Jones, which some people are saying is a bit woke. I'll just read this little section here. Action movie Sound of Freedom has defied expectations at the box office and beaten Harrison Ford's swan song, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. The movie centers around the real life story of the founder of the anti-sex trafficking charity Operation Underground Railroad, Tim Ballard. It's seen as a surprise that this relatively small-scale movie outperformed what is seen as a summer blockbuster Indiana Jones on the 4th of July, a date that in the past has been dominated by the likes of Jaws, Forrest Gump, and Top Gun Maverick. Now, this movie, because of its success, the topic that it deals with, a very serious topic, human trafficking, child sex trafficking, pedophilia, all these kind of very serious topics, it has been widely discussed online as well, even because of those connections and the reason, because of its history, the history of this movie, it's been widely discussed online. But of course, the mainstream media have taken exception to this, and they have started a campaign of bashing this movie to the extent of telling people not to go watch it. It is quite remarkable to see. And I think it's having the opposite effect. The more that they're doing this, the more it's making people want to actually go and watch this movie and try to understand why the media, mainstream media, would be so obsessed with downplaying this movie. Here, the Washington Post writes, Sound of Freedom, the low-budget film about child sex trafficking, almost topped the box office on July 4th, but its star, Jim Caviezel, has linked it to the QAnon movement. Sound of Freedom is a box office hit whose star embraces QAnon. Guardian writes, Sound of Freedom, the QAnon-adjacent thriller seducing Americans. Jim Caviezel stars as a hero trying to stop child traffickers in a paranoid new movie turning into a surprise box office hit. Of course, a movie about stopping child sex traffickers is linked to QAnon, and it's also paranoid. to have such a movie, right? Crazy stuff. Rolling Stone couldn't help themselves. Sound of Freedom is a superhero movie for dads with brainworms. Incredible, right? This is a movie that's raising awareness of a very serious but dark topic, of course, but very serious thing that is happening all around the world, in particular in countries in the West as well, where these things are taking place. Now, this particular movie focuses on in Colombia, but this could be happening anywhere, and it's important that people are made aware of these things. And this movie, it's a tragic kind of movie, but it tries to tell that story, even as a movie format, even though there's some real world elements in it. Now, CNN, incredibly, they had someone on which was encouraging people not to go watch this movie. I'm going to play this and it'll give you a bit of an understanding of what I am talking about.
You seem pretty familiar with him because he doesn't really hide his association with this real wild plot that involves, drinking the blood of children and things like that.
No, he doesn't hide it at all. And you have a lot of people who are in this world of QAnon who say, oh, they don't know what that is. They've never heard of it. They're just asking questions. With somebody like Jim Caviezel, he is openly embracing it. He's openly using its catchphrases and its concepts. He's speaking at QAnon conventions. And this film is being marketed to either specific QAnon believers or to people who believe all of the same tenets as QAnon, but claim they don't know what it is.
And The Sound of Freedom does focus on a real issue of sex trafficking. But that theme, it's sort of like that kernel of truth that feeds the QAnon conspiracy theory. Tell us how those two things work together.
Sure. And the most durable and the most believable conspiracy theories are not entirely false. There's something in them that is true and the rest of it is false. But the believers point to the one true thing and they say, oh, you don't believe that this particular thing is true. In terms of child trafficking, we know trafficking is real. We know it has real victims. No one is denying that. But these films are created out.
Anyway, you catch the drift. They've got Mike Rothschild on there. Hollywood QAnon promotes movie. QAnon promoters movie is a hit at the box office, and they got the author of the world's worst conspiracy theories. So look, they are so adamant on downplaying this movie, and it was very interesting. Another Twitter, there's some things circulating from The Guardian, which is, again, quite funny. This is in 2018. They wrote, child sex trafficking rife in Colombia's picturesque Cartagena. And then they've got, now, this is heading line now, Sound of Freedom, the QAnon adjacent thriller seducing Americans. A hero trying to stop child sex traffickers in paranoid new movie. Anyway, guys, what do you think? Are you going to go watch The Sound of Freedom if it hits the theaters in Australia, or at least watch it online? I think we should. I think from the reviews that I'm reading, just from the fact that the mainstream media is so obsessed with stopping people from watching this movie, we should all watch it and pay closer attention to these things which are happening in our country and all around the world, and really ensure that law enforcement and governments are doing the best that they can, if not the ultimate that they can, to stop this from happening to any other children. Well, there you go. That was my first movie review, and I haven't even watched the movie. Now moving on to some other news. So in Victoria, over the weekend, the Australian newspaper released some interesting documents they had obtained under Freedom of Information, which goes to show the extent and the level of involvement between Daniel Andrews and, I guess, PR firms, for lack of a better description, doing these research surveys on behavior of Victorians to different tactics or laws or rules they might introduce during the pandemic era to help with the management of the Victorian population as it pertains to things like vaccine passports, vaccine mandates, lockdowns. You know, a lot of the time we would have believed that all this was predicated on science and health advice, but no, it looks like some of it may have been based on PR advice, or what works best for the government, what people will tolerate based on these surveys that they did. So this is on the Australian. Daniel Andrews' office ordered secret surveys on COVID vaccine rollout. Andrews government commissioned secret polling about the COVID-19 vaccine rollout, including testing public support for vaccination passports and probing concerns about Victorians shifting from virus elimination to a suppression strategy. Data and analysis generated by the surveys conducted by Labour-aligned political intelligence and strategy firm Kudos Research has been designated by Premier Daniel Andrews' Department as Cabinet in confidence and blocked from public release. More than 130 pages of documents and emails released to the Week in Australian under Freedom of Information laws reveal Kudos conducted extensive vaccine polling using online surveys and focus groups between May and October 2021 amid a national debate about vaccine supply, safety, and ongoing restrictions on unvaccinated. But yeah, you get that. So I'm just going to go to some of these documents here that they've highlighted here. And I still believe a lot of this is actually redacted, but you can see the type of things that they were researching. Do people pay attention when virus fragments are found in the sewage wastewater? Do they understand what this means? Do people understand who is currently eligible and who is a priority for the vaccines? Has anyone in the groups been vaccinated? How was that experience? Are people encouraging friends and family to get vaccinated? I mean, this all seems pretty mundane. Let's just go to yellow. Do people think that this is acceptable even though there's a greater risk of COVID spreading throughout the community? How do people feel about living with the level of COVID in the community? How would people feel if some people, those impaired with immune systems or those unable to or who choose not to have the vaccine, still get sick, even die from COVID, as with the flu? Are people more concerned about being locked down or about COVID cases in the community? So this is the type of research the government was commissioning, no doubt costing the taxpayers all sorts of money to do this, to base their decisions on. And like I said, a lot of this is still somewhat redacted, somewhat secret, and we're finding out that maybe it wasn't all based on the science and the health advice. Maybe some of the decisions that were made were based on these surveys. And that really goes to show you that these policymakers, when we look at how businesses and lives are destroyed, it might have all come down to this research surveys that they took. We need to get answers on this, right? We should have a royal commission or some type of commission for the state-based review of what these governments did. All these documents, all these people who participated in conducting these style of surveys, these companies should be called in front of these commissions, as well as the government ministers and the premier himself, and be forced to face the music and answer the questions as to how these decisions came about. Now, Australia right now is grappling with the Voice referendum, trying to determine whether Indigenous Australians, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians will have a separate voice to Parliament, which with itself comes a lot of other issues that people are currently debating. Now, heading over to America on the 4th of July, something totally unrelated, but you can maybe catch on to the similarities once we discuss this topic. And that is, of course, Ben and Jerry's ice cream finding themselves in a Bud Light style moment. That's right, Bud Light style moment. Now, famously, of course, Bud Light is now a description used to talk about companies who virtue signal or create work policies that end up detrimentally impacting their bottom line and leading to boycotts. So let's have a look at this story. Bud Light of ice cream. Ben and Jerry's in latest customer boycott shitstorm as share price melts. I love this headline. That's why I picked this article. And before I actually read the article, I want to show you what this is around. So on the 4th of July, on Independence Day in America, this is what Ben and Jerry's, their woke, virtue signaling intern probably at the social media intern, decided to post on Twitter. This 4th of July, it's high time you recognize that US exists on stolen indigenous land and commit to returning it. Learn more and take action now. The United States was founded on stolen indigenous land. This 4th of July, let's commit to returning it. This is stolen land. Now, in the USA, in America, there is no voice to Parliament and all this kind of stuff. But even then, we're having these companies virtue signaling to this extent on such a day as the 4th of July. Can you imagine in Australia, if the voice to Parliament does get through and there is this separate advisory body, the kind of virtue signaling we're going to see from Australian companies? Forget about the advisory body and what they're going to be demanding and asking for. let's have a look at what these corporations and how they're going to behave. And if these companies in America are anything to go by, I am sure we're going to see a hell of a lot of this. And finally, before I read the story, there was also this is funny. This is posted on Twitter now. I can't confirm this if it's 100% true, but a Native American tribe that originally controlled the land in Vermont that Ben and Jerry's headquarters is located on wants land returned to them after the company publicly called for stolen lands to be returned. Indigenous chief wants to take back Ben and Jerry's HQ built on stolen land. I gotta laugh. I can't do these news segments seriously because these stories are so funny. The fact is that these companies just they don't get it. Anyway, I'm not gonna read this news article because I think I explained quite well what happened with the Ben and Jerry's boycott. But I think they lost because of this. They lost around $2 billion from their market cap, just based on the boycott. And again, their brand name has been dragged through the mud, and it's not a good thing for companies these days. And it's interesting, and I think it's a good thing that these companies are learning these lessons when they try to go woke. Now, this next topic is quite controversial, and I have to be careful in terms of how I speak about this topic. And of course, this is none other than transgender rights and the issues pertaining to women's rights, and of course, increasingly, how it impacts children. So first up, we're going to switch over to the USA again, because right now we have the CDC in America introducing guidance on chest feeding. That's right, chest feeding guidance. So I'm not going to give too much opinion. I'm just going to read these next three articles to give you an understanding of what is happening in America, what's happening in Australia, what's happening in the UK, and just how all these things kind of intersect into what's happening in general. And it feels like it's a avalanche of these things occurring, and it's kind of out of control now, right? It's out of control. We don't have too much say in how these things are being dealt with by our governments. They are going full on, full steam ahead into this area, and we're seeing these government agencies involve themselves in this manner as well. So let's read this article. CDC says trans people can chest feed babies in published guidance. Critics warn of health risks. This is on American news website. Washington, D.C. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC official website, now has advice for transgender and non-binary Americans who are looking to feed their children by means of breastfeeding or alternatively chest feeding. Even the subtle changes of languages which are happening now, it's happening for a few years now, but now it's officially almost chest feeding. The provider guidance details how those who have had their breasts removed or those who are growing breasts by taking hormones can feed newborn children, but several critics are pushing back against the CDC's information, saying that the major health institute failed to mention or gauge risks of such practices. In a section on the CDC's website that deals with breastfeeding and breast surgery, a section had asked questions: can transgender parents who have had breast surgery breastfeed or chest feed their infants? Yes, the CD says in bold text. Some transgender parents who have had breast top surgery may wish to breastfeed or chest feed, a term used by some transgender and non-binary parents, their infants. Healthcare providers working with these families should be familiar with medical and emotional and social aspects of gender transitions to provide optimal family-centered care and meet the nutritional needs of the infant. An individual does not need to have given birth to breastfeed or chest feed, the CDC says in the same section. Some families may have other preferred terminology for how they feed their babies, such as nursing, chest feeding, or body feeding. The CDC has responsibility to talk about the health risks, but they have been derelict in doing that, Dr. Jane Orient told dailymail.com, adding, we have no idea what the long-term effects on the child will be if transgender parents are using all kinds of off-label hormones. If it has been tested a handful of times, how would we know that long-term effect? The short-term is one thing, but the long-term in terms of physical and mental illness, it's an emerging field, to put it mildly. So that's just some of the comments from the critics who are raising alarm bells over this, saying that, men who have had hormones who are now saying that they're women who are then chest feeding or body, is it body feeding? What's the term? body feeding these infants. Like, you know, I'm not going to go into this, but you can understand some of the issues and worries that are being raised here. Now, in Australia, this is going to a story in Australia, inside the world of teenage transitions in Australia, where 13-year-olds are having their breasts removed after one letter from a psychiatrist, which teens can't even do in Thailand, and mums humblebrag with before and after pics on Facebook. Well, this is the thing, right? Australian girls as young as 13 years are allegedly having their breasts surgically removed to make them look and feel more masculine as they undergo gender transition. One 15-year-old who has gender dysphoria documented having double mastectomy at an Australian plastic surgery clinic in a Reddit post, describing the experience as a 10 out of 10. The teen encouraged other adolescents who did not identify with the sex that they were assigned at birth to undergo the same operation. The teen wrote that the initial appointment with the surgeon in January lasted no more than 20 minutes, and a follow-up to take measurements took a similar length of time. The teen then called a psychiatrist requesting a referral for chest masculinization, sometimes called top surgery, and was told he was unavailable for the next 11 months. But when the teen told the psychiatrist they had already had surgery date booked, they offered an appointment a couple of months later. After just one consultation with the psychiatrist in May, the psychiatrist allegedly wished the teen luck and wrote a referral for a double mastectomy. The teen had spent 2 years saving for the surgery, which took place on June 18th, and their parents covered the rest of the $14,873 bill. Yeah. Another teenager who was recently underwent a double mastectomy was pictured smiling on a Facebook post with his mother. Now, this post has been blurred on this Daily Mail article, but this is the mother writing, "My baby's top surgery was today. It went well. He was so excited. Still in recovery, but surgeon said it went well. I have cried so many tears over the last few years, but today I only felt relief and happiness for him. I was surprised. I thought I'd be a wreck. Gosh, I love this kid." So, I mean, look, yeah, parents are supporting this thing. Like this particular parent or this mom is helping this kid go through this whole process. And that's really what's raising some of the concerns here, is that we often think that kids don't know what they're doing. And I would say that that's the case. When you're that age, you probably don't have a handle on how these things are going to impact you in the future, right? But now we have this issue where adults, a psychiatrist giving referral to one kid, or a parent supporting another kid in doing these type of life-altering surgeries, really, that can't be reversed in many instances. And it's adults that are involved in the process. So it is a very, very confusing thing to try to understand what's going on with this. And I'm not going to say any more on this topic, but I'm going to move on to this latest thing, which has come out, I think, from the UK. And I'm just going to read this article because this is just like next level crazy again. According to new guidance from the Crown Prosecutor Service, CPS, spouses who object to their partner undergoing gender reassignment surgery or refuse to fund it could be considered domestic abusers. The body responsible for prosecuting criminal cases investigated by the police has identified a range of behaviors by partners or other family members that are liable to be interpreted as aggression against trans or non-binary people. They include withholding money from transitioning, criticizing the victim for not being a real man or woman, threatening or sharing pre-transition images, or failing to use their preferred name or pronoun. So you can see where all of this is heading, and it's very confusing for many people to try to put all this together. I'm just trying to show you 3 different instances of these things happening in different parts of the world. I can't make too much comment on this kind of stuff on YouTube these days. It's not allowed on YouTube to comment on this in a way that might make people feel a certain way. I don't want to get into it too much, but you understand what I'm saying. This is what's going on right now. Now, the White House has been embroiled in a saga to do with cocaine. And it's funny in many ways, but it also shows you the fact that the Bidens can get away with so much in the White House. Even the media here has been very tame in covering this topic Can you imagine if Donald Trump or one of his children or anyone in his administration was found to have cocaine in the White House, right? Even if we didn't know who the person was, if there was cocaine in the White House during the Trump administration, they would probably try and impeach him. But because it's Joe Biden, it's very different. And we have Politico here saying that White House cocaine culprit unlikely to be found, law enforcement official. I'm just going to read through these articles. Who is the White House cocaine culprit? Allegations and jokes trend on Twitter. And of course, we have this video of Hunter Biden at the White House not that long ago. And he does look like he's a bit agitated, and he's doing something with his hands, a bit of that action. So who knows what Hunter's up to that day? No allegations made. And this question was, of course, put to the White House press secretary, who is very well known for not answering questions in any manner whatsoever. Let's have a listen to her response when asked about this.
There has been some irresponsible reporting about the family, and so I got to call that out here. And I have been very clear. I was clear 2 days ago when talking about this over and over again as I was being asked a question. As you know, and media outlets reported this, the Biden family was not here. They were not here. They were at Camp David. They were not here Friday. They were not here Saturday. They were not here Sunday. They were not even here Monday. They came back on Tuesday. So to ask that question is actually incredibly irresponsible. And
So yeah, don't even bring it close to the Biden family. To consider such a thing is incredibly irresponsible, right? Don't even bring it close. And here's CNN, of course, the media. Just listen to this. Just listen to this. Listen to CNN.
Now these more conclusive lab tests, yeah.
I would like to know blow by blow who was responsible for this.
Too soon.
There's no too soon on
Too
this.
soon?
No one was injured, as far as
Thank
we
you,
know.
Kate.
And it's an illicit drug at the White House. Why can't you actually have a bit of fun with it?
I don't believe in fun.
No, he doesn't. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. This is CNN News Central Inside Politics.
Now these more conclusive lab tests.
Come on, guys. Can you imagine if that was Donald Trump in the White House? They would not be making these jokes. They would be talking about how it just sets such a bad example for the rest of the country and how dangerous it is. But this guy here, Joe Biden, he can do no wrong. Here he is. What's he doing? I just wanted to play this video. I hope you don't mind me making these news segments a little bit more informal and laughing, because it's just too funny. This old geyser. He should probably be in a retirement home, I reckon, this guy. Look at him. But I guess he's on holiday. He's on holiday all the time. This is from RNC Research. They said the shirtless Joe Biden enjoys a relaxing day at the beach. Biden has spent 353 days, 39.2% of his presidency on vacation. Now, in Australia, of course, we are having to deal with the fact that our government is trying to pass these misinformation, disinformation laws through the Communications Bill amendment, whatever they want to call it. Who cares? This Orwellian thing that they're trying to pass through our parliament here this year. Now, in America and in Australia, of course, we saw during the pandemic how involved governments were in terms of liaising with these social media companies in secret. Well, at least in America, a federal judge has slammed the Biden administration, saying, putting a limit on the communications ability of the government and certain federal agencies in terms of liaising with these social media companies to suppress free expression and freedom of speech. Now, I'm just going to read a little bit of this article from the Bloomberg. Biden administration ordered to limit social media contacts. Federal judge restricts contacts aimed at limiting free speech. A federal judge in Louisiana ordered the key Biden administration officials and agencies not to contact social media platforms to suppress speakers and viewpoints they disagree with, in a major development that pits free speech rights against government efforts to curb misinformation. The ruling came in a case filed by Louisiana and Missouri attorney generals who had claimed that the Biden administration was trying to silence views and speakers who questioned its COVID policies and questioned the validity of the 2020 election. U.S. District Judge Terry A. Dougherty in Monroe, Louisiana, said in the Tuesday ruling that large swaths of the government, including the Department of Health and Human Services and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, couldn't talk to social media companies for the purpose of urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing any manner the removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech. How amazing is that? Bravo to this judge for putting this smackdown on the government, because we know that they did all that during that time. Crazy as it sounds, the government was actively working against people, ordinary people, doctors and experts, whoever they didn't agree with, to silence them. And it's ridiculous. We know in America, at least, they have these protections afforded to them through the Constitution, which is what this judge is claiming that was, breached in many ways. Now, in Australia, we don't have those kind of protections. So that's why it's, incumbent upon all of us to really delve into what's happening with the changes that the government's trying to push through in Australia, because you will see more and more increased communications between governments and social media companies in secret if those laws are passed, and they will be censoring the crap out of us. So in the description, I'm going to put a link for more information about this bill and some information on what you can do to put your submissions forward, and also any petitions that you can get involved in signing, because I am very hesitant to say this, but it's the truth. I do believe that bill that they're planning in Australia will be passed. But, if amendments can be made, if changes can be done that would limit the restrictions on free speech, and particularly protections that we should have in terms of political communications, that would be ideal. Of course, the best thing that could happen is that bill doesn't go through at all. But I don't think we have the political will of the population who are, sleeping at the wheel. Really, the political will of the population to actually fight for something so basic as protecting our free speech. We will, fight for sports games. We'll fight for our right to do all sorts of mundane, nonsensical things like this, but we won't fight for the most important things in Australia. But at least this judge you're seeing talking about the value of protecting those things. Of course, it's no surprise that the Biden administration has filed a notice of appeal in the court for this, so they will challenge this, and that was always going to happen. And I think from a year and a half ago, the Biden administration was trying to also put together like a disinformation department, but that got laughed at, that got ridiculed, and they had to just stop the entire project from going ahead. But through the courts, potentially now, there will be a battle around this topic. And hopefully, if this does get to, for instance, SCOTUS, for instance, hopefully there's a ruling there that would drive these, free speech hating leftists, these censorship loving Marxists, will drive them crazy if there's a definitive ruling to stop this kind of government interference in the everyday lives of people through colluding with these social media companies. And just to wrap it up, obviously, I did a story on Threads the other day, the competitor to Twitter, being shielded by Mark Zuckerberg. And I've been exploring Threads for journalistic reasons, of course, but I'm on Instagram anyway, so it's not hard to sign up to Threads. So I just logged in there, and I've already been banned and blocked by the ABC. That's right. The ABC News has blocked me for laughing at this post. I'm going to show you the post. This is why ABC News blocked me. This is the post that ABC News put up. They're tagging a Network 10, another news station in Australia, and they're writing, "Will you accept this rose as a token of our commitment to follow each other forever?" And to that I wrote, this is like so cringeworthy. I did a puke emoji, and I said it's a love story as tragic as the Titanic. Just very basic stuff, but they blocked me. And I feel like that's because the ABC, these media organizations in Australia and around the world who are now jumping onto Threads, they are very, very much hoping that there is this echo chamber that they can create on Threads where they get rid of dissenting views, where they get rid of people who are critical of them, with the backing of someone like Mark Zuckerberg, who will help create and foster this environment. right? The last thing the ABC wants on Threads is people pointing out how ridiculous they sound on some of these posts. Now, this was, of course, a joke post, but even on serious topics on Twitter and so forth, the ABC, CNN, these organizations are always called out and shown, different points of view or shown different evidence. But they would very much like to stop that on a platform like Instagram, because on Instagram, and let's just say all the normies are there, for instance, people who aren't really paying attention to what's happening in the geopolitical space or just news in general, they will go to Instagram Threads, they will log in, they'll see these news articles, they'll see all these positive comments reaffirming what the article says on a particular narrative, and they'll be like, oh, well, this is what everyone thinks. Everyone loves the vaccine passports, right? That's what these organizations want. That's what, Twitter used to kind of be like that in many ways, until Elon Musk changed that a little bit. And I know people have criticized, on my previous video I did on this, they criticized Musk as well. And fair criticism. I agree with you. There are issues still there on Twitter, but Threads by Zuckerberg, Threads by Meta, is a far worse proposition for anything to do with freedom of speech. Right? It's not a censorship-free platform at all. It is a echo chamber, and they are hard at work ensuring that critical voices on that platform will be silenced. I also shared this particular journalist, Patricia Cavalis, an ABC journalist, who a couple of days ago wrote this. So I'm done here. I'm on Threads. Same name. Bye. Hashtag Ospol. This is 2 days ago. She hasn't deactivated her Twitter account, of course. She hasn't deleted her Twitter account. A lot of these people that say they're leaving Twitter, they don't delete their accounts or anything like that. They just leave it there. And they're not really 100% committed to this. And I wrote, imagine thinking you are a serious journalist because you left Twitter, a platform working on removing censorship barriers, to sign up to a censorship-first echo chamber controlled by Mark Zuckerberg. And that's it, guys. That's my show for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're enjoying a bit more of the casual format where I'm laughing a little bit more and enjoying these stories instead of taking it so seriously with this news. I want to have a bit more fun with this, and in particular, building out this so I can actually do this live and take some of your comments, interact with some of the ideas you have about these stories I'm talking about, share some of your opinions, and potentially debate some of those ideas as well on a more of a lifestyle format. As always, guys, you can follow along with everything that I'm doing on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, Odyssey, and of course on Threads at The Real Rukshan, or search for Rukshan Fernando. I hope you guys have the lovely Sunday night, and see you guys next week.